Hello and welcome to another edition of the NRS Insights Podcast. I'm John Lofstock, and today I am joined again by a good friend, John Petersen, who is the president, owner, partner in Marketmind LLC, which is a marketing firm that helps connect suppliers and retailers. How are you, John?
I'm doing great, John. Good to see you.
Good to have you. Before we begin, I want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on in the industry, and we see all sorts of new trends emerging, acquisitions, new products. Is there anything before we begin that kind of jumps out at you? Anything that you've noticed that you want to state up front?
Well, I mean, I think that again, I think nothing's changed dramatically in terms of how, if we're going to talk a little bit about how suppliers can partner with retailers on helping them sell more product and being better retailers.
Hmm.
Some of the fundamentals are still there. You know, you need to be partnered with a wholesaler in most cases, unless got your own trucks out there dropping, which most companies do not. You need to have a really good wholesaler partner to make sure you're not getting out of stocks and whatnot. But that I'll go with that as just an assumption that we already know, and then just go right to the retail level and say what are you bringing in that's going to help that retailer differentiate themselves from a
Hmm.
competitor in the market, whether it's a competitive C-store, competitive other retail box. And I was at a meeting at a pretty prominent Midwest retailer about a month ago, and it was just interesting in partnering with some suppliers on how they were going to work with that particular chain and what those needs were. And frankly, was pretty surprised at how open-minded that said established chain was, willing to take on new products. But I would say all of those folks had a reason for that retailer to do so. They either were offering them some sort of exclusivity in the market for at least a certain period of time, because every retailer wants to differentiate themselves. And differentiation, I think, is what my takeaway was there, was how does that chain differentiate
Hmm.
themselves? And how do they find supplier partners that are willing to help them create that either local customization around a sports team in the case of this particular chain that attended this meeting, or whether it's a regional flavor or regional tie-in to something that consumers are going to resonate with, with the brand. And then again, exclusivity, and then making sure you've got product to be able to stay in stock and help that retailer avoid out of stock. So those were kind of, again and again, there was probably about 16 suppliers trying to either increase their footprint and presence with that particular chain, or just get
Hmm.
it, get on the shelves. Period. So
So we
those are some things I noticed.
Sure. We talk a lot about it. I want to get into what you're saying on the new product side, but obviously new products are always very important for convenience stores. They like to say it's kind of the lifeblood in generating excitement and getting customers to keep coming back in. But you can say the same thing about food service, tobacco, and beverages. At the end of the day, though, and everything you just described, it comes down to blocking and tackling, right? I hate to use a football analogy, but just blocking and tackling and doing the work in the trenches, and having a good store, having the shelves filled with the products your customers want, and offering great service.
Agreed. And then again, if a lot of these categories that we talk about, because the footprint is so small, are hyper competitive. So you better have a pretty darn good proposition to that retailer, again, as to why to stock the product. Beyond I'm a nice guy and I'm your sales rep, what is the product going to do to fill a void in your current, offering and your current planogram? As good as every retailer is at keeping up on overall trends and categories, there's only X amount of hours in a day and a finite number of people on their staff. So they kind of rely on, that individual category expert to really objectively, um, critique where they're, overstocked, overskewed, underskewed, missing a flavor, missing something, even if it's a competitor. But just to say, hey, national trends would say you really should be looking at this, or top quartile retailers have more of this and less of that, and very consultative approach,
Mhm.
um, with a product, again, that the consumer ultimately wants that they don't currently have, or is a different angle on it.
I like talking to you and having you on the podcast because you bring a really a perspective that very few people in the industry have, and you understand, the industry from a collaborative C-store vendor approach. So is it me, or one of the things I've noticed really since the end of COVID is there have been some new products, but not nearly as much as there was pre-COVID. And then the new products that we're seeing tend to be line extensions or flavor change tweaks. Remember, I mean, we used to go to NACS and we'd see, remember, vape, vape. Now vape's a big thing to everyone, but I remember walking around on the first NACS and saying, what is that? 5 Hour Energy. I mean, these were all new products that came to market.
CBD,
CBD, a
CBD,
whole category.
a whole pavilion. Yeah, right. And now
Yeah,
there's hardly anybody.
not that kind of innovation, right? I mean, you hear threats of marijuana being in THC products, but it really, by and large, hasn't caught on yet. I mean, it will, but there's not as much innovation, it seems, as there used to be.
Yeah, I would concur. And I'd say where that innovation is really happening is at the beverage bar, whether it's teas or just way bigger coffee programs to compete with, the snob coffee houses. People going to the cappuccinos, and those are taking up more space at the beverage bar and the coffee bar. And then I would also say, there's no doubt that food service extensions continue to be prevalent. They have to be. People are not eating any less. The competitive set against QSRs and then other C stores that have been earlier adopters to food service puts a lot of retailers a little bit behind the eight ball if they waited. So now you see some catch up going on, and the ones that were already there are just getting better at it and are seeing the margins and dedicating more and more footage to that area.
And especially with third-party delivery and Uber Eats and DoorDash and all that, that
Exactly.
kind of extends the hours. The old model, you may have said by 7 o'clock, we're done, we're wrapping up our food service. But now, if sitting home, let's order out and get a pizza or get a taco or whatever. Your store needs to be open. That's all there is to it.
Agreed. And there's a lot of people that want to eat breakfast for dinner or eat lunch at 1 a.m. because it's either between shifts, so they're coming home from bars or whatever it is, depending where you're located. There's just it's a much bigger deal, especially with the hours that the C-store operator is keeping.
Yeah, Wawa does something peculiar here. Wawa, I'm in a Wawa market. I don't think Wawa goes out as far as where you are in the Ohio
Nope.
market. And they serve pizza. I've had it. It's a good snack, but it's only available after 4 p.m., which I thought was kind of an oddity for the convenience store industry. It's usually like what you want when you want it, kind of right now. So
Right.
they made the decision to go. I'm sure that has to do with the ovens, the amount of time it may take to prepare it, to heat it up.
Yeah, it's weird because I was just at the NRA show in Chicago, and I mean, breakfast pizzas are a big deal. Just in the food service world, not necessarily C-store specific, but where better for breakfast pizza than C-store. And typically you would have breakfast pizza at breakfast. So if you're not serving it, you're not getting that share of stomach on that individual.
Yeah, breakfast pizza is good all day as long as it doesn't have pineapple on it. I was recently with someone in Tennessee, and if she's listening, I apologize for throwing you under the bus, but pineapple should not be on pizza. I'm sorry.
Said a true New Yorker. Yep.
It's kind of offensive. But anyway, I digress. There have been some interesting changes, obviously, in the White House. There's been some things that are going to affect our market. They always do, whether it's the fuel side of the business, the tobacco side of the business, alcohol, lottery, etc. There are some you brought up to my attention recently some interesting legislation being proposed in Texas that could impact, geez, everything, literally everything. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert on it, but it certainly jumped off the page at me when I was reading it that Texas legislation is set. Oh, it's on the governor's desk for signature. If it does get signed, is a game changer, backed by Robert F. Kennedy, that basically would look at the ultra processed snacks and beverages and require labeling that says not recommended for human consumption, which is about as bold of a statement as you could possibly make. You and I have both been in the industry for a pretty good run, you longer than me. We've seen what's gone on with tobacco. And then if you were to do this to the snack and beverage category, obviously alcohol has been under fire, or alcoholic beverages have been under fire in terms of positioning and time when you can sell them and labeling and whatnot. So it just makes this little box we call a C-store that much more difficult to operate in that arena if 80% of the store is being regulated and having to post things like that. So really surprising that this would start in Texas of all states to me, but who knows? The nothing's normal anymore.
With RFK Jr., we were seeing some videos that he put out on some red dyes, blue dyes, and some, like you mentioned, ultra processed foods. This has an opportunity to impact the way C-stores go to market. It shouldn't be as hard for these manufacturers as they're going to make it sound, because they do it in Europe, and as I understand, there are different regulations in different countries. But it does have the potential to shake up the industry, much the way tobacco was shaken up, 20 years ago.
Yep. And anybody trying to get in, into stores with those said product lines, that's just something to be on the lookout for, because our friends in the tobacco industry will tell you what a joy it's been the last 20 years plus in dealing in that type of environment, right or wrong. Just very, very, very expensive and difficult. And we're talking about packaging and products that have already been shipped, and do you have to recall them as a supplier to get those labels? And it's a very complex topic. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the fact that it's even being bantied about is a little bit nerve-wracking, I'm sure, for some folks.
All right. So, excluding tobacco and technology companies, you work with a lot of CPG and other manufacturers that are looking to expand their role in convenience stores. What's the one bit of advice you give them when they come to you and say, "Hey, I want to get in Casey's, I want to get in Wawa"? You don't just get into these stores, obviously. So what's some of the advice you give them?
Well, again, I'll go back to the chicken and egg that everyone goes back and forth on. Is as a small company, if you are a small company, maybe you're a big company that was not in C-store but now wants to be in it, can you force distribution? And if you can't, you better have, again, a really good wholesaler partner that can help you get these retailers on board. Again, the wholesalers want to know which one of my clients is wanting to stock this item, and it's going to probably need to be either one big chain or aggregating multiples. It makes it worth their while to inventory that. So from that perspective, how do you go after them? That's where I kind of always start, is having that conversation about, is it chicken or egg? And then also, just the supporting information I think you need to have as a supplier, the proof of concept that there's a demand for this product, any marketing campaigns that are being done in the B2C space to help, create demand for the product and educate the consumer. You and I looked at what happened with e-cigarettes and vape, and the educational process that needed to be done by both the retailer and the supplier to the consumer on all these sea of choices. How do you navigate them? So do you have the wherewithal to advertise to the consumer market, to help educate the consumer market? Do you have research and data that shows that your product is done exceedingly well in big box grocery, drug, pharma, wherever it's coming from? Why should they move a competitor aside? Is it price only? Maybe that gets their attention. So it's those conversations where it's not like just call a buyer at one of those big aforementioned chains you said and said, "I got this product and I'd like you to consider bringing it in." If it were that easy, we would all be doing it. It's a really tough road. And when you go to NACS in the new product section, you come back the following year, a lot of those companies have not been able to make it in the channel because there's so many people competing for so little space. But that being said, if you can get there, it's an incredible market, and that's why people try so hard to get there.
And blocking and tackling, again, relationships and trust, having a good product that's been successful in the past, and having those relationships and the trust that the companies that they'll take care of you. And I was kind of laughing while you were talking to myself because do you remember how many times, and I've shared a lot of it with you, but I used to get calls from people, hey, you run a trade association, you get a lot of retailers coming, 20,000 stores represented at one of your conferences. Can I get up there in front of your group and just tell them about my product? Oh, yeah, sure. You just want to show up and not sponsor and speak to everyone? Yeah, sure. Come on by.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, no, still get those questions, and I don't blame people for asking, and hopefully they don't blame us for saying that's a ludicrous ask. But there's a methodical way about going after the market. It's clearly a relationship-driven market, unlike any I've ever been exposed to, and I think you would agree with that. So, it's about building those relationships at events by making face-to-face sales calls. It can't be done just the way we're doing this now. I don't feel most of these products need to be, touched and tasted and trialed and sampled. And so, there's a lot of different ways of doing that. And then just trying to, you know, strengthen relationships either in your local market or somewhere else that helps you knock out those first couple of chains. Because once you've got some folks on the, on the marquee, it's going to be a lot easier. No one wants to go first. Nobody wants to go first. So it oftentimes makes sense to get a couple small regionals in the backyard of that big regional or national player to get their attention. That so-and-so is doing it. I wouldn't be the first to flight.
I advise people that all the time. They always, John, it is like one of the universal truths. They are, I've got this product. Can you get me into Walmart and Sheetz and Casey's? And I'm like, get into a couple of 5 and 10 store chains first. Have a track record of success. And more importantly, learn, right? You're going to learn. You may think you have a great product at the right price point in the right location. You're not going to know until you get into a store. So start with a 5-store chain, a 10-store chain, your neighborhood where you shop. Talk to them.
Yeah.
And it's great advice. Not everyone wants to hear it, though.
Yeah, start with a 7-Eleven franchisee instead of 7-Eleven corporate.
Yeah.
Start with someone that's got 5 stores first, and then, that's a whole nother chapter. But yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
All right, well, great. Any closing words, any bits of advice for our retailer listeners that are looking at new products or looking at suppliers for some advice?
Yeah, everything that we've already discussed and then some. New product introduction seems to have slowed a little bit, but there's still a lot of stuff. Some of that's because of M&A on the supplier side, but there's still a lot coming down the pike. And as we get toward NACS, and even like, product contests that I get privy to, there's a lot of new products coming in to those kind of things. And there'll be a lot of new products at NACS, and keep your eyes open. There's some products out there that the consumer wants and can help grow your sales and your margins. And for the suppliers, kind of adhere to some of the things we've discussed here today, plus other stuff. And the future of this market's still extremely, extremely bright, and I'm happy to be affiliated with it.
Yeah, I bet people would be surprised to hear just how many products you get for a new product contest. It's not tens, it could be hundreds, which goes to show you it's a desirable market, and it's a lucrative market.
Yep, agreed.
Well, good, John. Thank you again for joining us. Always learn a lot, and look forward to it. So
thanks, John.
So for everyone, I'm John Lofstock. I want to thank our guest today, John Petersen, and we look forward to having you on another NRS Insights podcast. Have a good afternoon, everyone.